The Crimson Dust of Xlo's prime coated everything. A fine, gritty film that tasted of iron and something else. Something subtly acrid. David, a lone scout from the Vanguard Expedition, lay prone on a ridge. His optical implants zoomed in on the colossal spire in the distance. It was an alien marvel, a structure of iridescent, crystalline material that pierced the hazy orange sky. Its myriad facets catching the dim light of Xylos's twin suns, giving it an unnerving, almost too perfect glow. For weeks, it had been a silent, enigmatic presence, a testament to a civilization that seems to have vanished. His mission was reconnaissance, not interaction, a directive that felt increasingly meaningless on this desolate world, especially after the Vanguard herself had suffered a catastrophic system failure during atmospheric entry, scattering debris and leaving him the sole survivor. Then the spire shuddered. A blinding flash erupting from its base, a silent explosion of raw energy that momentarily overloaded David's optics. He blinked, recalibrating, and watched as a ripple of destructive force spread outward, tearing at the very fabric of the landscape, not merely shattering it, but leaving it a strange, dull residue. The spire, once so solid, began to crack. Fissures spiderwebbed across its shimmering surface, glowing with an internal, dying light. Dust plumes, thick and dark, billowed against the orange sky as the monumental structure groaned, then began to crumble, shedding massive chunks of crystal that crashed to the ground below. The sound was not of collapsing stone, but of a deep, sorrowful sigh, like a dying titan. David's comms remained silent. The Vanguard long since destroyed, he was truly alone. He saw tiny, fleeting figures, none human, scattering from the collapsing ruins, like insects fleeing a disturbed nest. Then one figure caught his eye. It was distinctively humanoid, shimmering with an ethereal glow that seemed to be part of its very being. A soft luminescence in the darkening air. It stumbled, clearly injured, before disappearing from view amidst the falling debris. This wasn't just a building, it was a sanctuary, a home. Now it was gone, leaving only ruin and a single vulnerable survivor. David felt a cold knot in his stomach, a strange empathy for a life he had never known. David knew his orders were to observe, to avoid contact. But the sight of that falling figure, a being so clearly in distress, stirred something beyond protocol. He was a scout, but he was also a human. He began to move, descending the ridge, his rifle held loosely at his side. The ground beneath his boots were a treacherous mix of loose red soil and jagged obsidian-like rocks, each step crushing loudly in the sudden, eerie quiet. The air grew thick with the dust of the fallen spire, a fine, gritty powder that stung his eyes and coated his throat. He moved with a practiced ease, a silent hunter navigating a broken world. His focus narrowed to the coordinates where he had last seen the Shimmering Figure. He found her amidst the debris, partially shielded by a shattered crystalline shard. She lay still, her alabaster skin stark against the crimson dust, her long silver hair fanned out around her, almost absorbing the dim light. Her minimalist, shimmering silver garment, simple and form-fitting, seemed to be woven from the light itself, giving off a faint, almost imperceptible hum that vibrated in the air around her. As he approached, her luminous blue eyes fluttered open, with a fear that radiated outward, causing the air to feel heavy and cold around David. A desperate plea, unspoken but clear, emanated from her gaze. Fixed on him with an intensity that held him still, she was a creature of impossible beauty, fragile and utterly alone. Before David could offer a hand, a low growl rumbled through the ground, a sound that resonated in his chest. Emerging from the swirling dust, their forms coalesced from the haze, were the metallic creatures. They were massive, easily 3 times David's height, walking on all fours like giant silverback gorillas from his homeworld. Their bodies were composed of dark, segmented plates of what looked like forged steel. Sharp, wicked protrusions jutted from their heads, like serrated crowns, and from their forearms, resembling bladed gauntlets. Their eyes, if they had had them, were obscured by the shadows cast by their heavy brows. These were Ironclads, apex predators of Xylos Prime, or so the Vanguard had theorized. There were 3 of them, moving with a ponderous, inexorable gait. These specific Ironclads, David would soon learn, were different. They were under a degree of control. Their internal whirring sounds, slightly more uniform, less erratic than what he had expected from true predators. They paid David no mind, their attention fixed on the fallen alien. One of them reached a massive, 3-fingered hand towards her. David reacted without conscious thought. He fired a burst from his rifle, and the energy bolts impacted the Ironclad's metallic hide with a shower of sparks, but little apparent damage. The creature paused. Its head slowly swirled towards him. Its movements were deliberate. Its gaze, though unseen, felt heavy and assessing. The other 2 Ironclads stopped, forming a loose semicircle around the alien and David. These were not wild, but tools. The immediate threat was not from them, but from their handlers. David knew this was a mistake. He was outmatched, outgunned, and alone. But the alien woman's wide, terrified eyes were fixed on him, and he could not retreat. He stood his ground, rifle ready. The lead Ironclad took a heavy step forward, its metallic feet crushing the crystalline dust. David braced himself, but before he could fire again, a sharp, sudden crack echoed through the air. A net, woven from thick, glowing strands, erupted from the ground, wrapping around David and pulling taut. He struggled, but the material was impossibly strong, constricting his limbs. He hit the ground hard. The wind knocked from his lungs. The Ironclad had not come alone. Small, agile figures, cloaked in dark, form-fitting suits, emerged from the shadows of the debris. They were human, or at least human-sized. Their weapons were energy rifles similar to his own, but with a distinct angular design. They were not Vanguard. They were mercenaries, scavengers, or perhaps another expedition entirely, operating under different colors. They moved with a cold efficiency, securing David. One of them, a tall, lean woman with a severe expression, knelt beside him. Her helmet visor was opaque, hiding her face, revealing nothing but the hard curve of her jaw. "Well," her voice was synthesized, devoid of emotion, a flat hum in the dust-laden air. "Look what the dust storm has dragged in, another lost lamb." David did not struggle against the net. He lay still, his eyes scanning the ground. There were 4 of them, besides the woman. 2 were heavily armored, their movements stiff, suggesting less experience in the fluid combat. Perhaps new recruits, or those suited for heavy lifting only. One was smaller, quicker, constantly glancing at the lead woman, seeking approval, a nervous flutter in her posture. The last, a burly man, kept his gaze fixed on the controlled Ironclads, a subtle tension in his shoulders that went beyond simple vigilance. He was worried they may become unstable, or that their presence attracted something worse. "You're a long way from home, soldier," the lead woman continued, her voice flat. "Or you have just made a very bad decision." She gestured toward the alien woman, Lyra, who was now being fully cared for and lifted by two of the controlled ironclads, their movements surprisingly gentle, despite their monstrous appearance, almost deferential. Lyra's eyes, still open with fear, met David's again. Her eyes were fixed on him, pleading, a silent scream of distress that seemed to echo in his own thoughts. "She's injured," David stated, his voice calm, even. "And those things, they're not natural, they're controlled. The ones who control them are far more dangerous than the machines themselves." The lead woman scoffed, a dry, dismissive sound. "And you know this, how? A hunch? Some deep space insight?" David ignored her sarcasm. He focused on her posture, the slight, almost imperceptible tilt of her head, the way her gloved fingers tapped a nervous rhythm against her thigh. "Your squad is nervous," he began, his voice low, conversational. "Especially the big one, Mark, the one watching the Ironclad. He's seen them do something truly unsettling. He's worried they're going to turn on you, or worse, that something else will come for them, drawn by the very creatures you command." Mark's eyes, visible through his visor, darted toward David, a flicker of raw fear in their depths. The lead woman's posture shifted, a subtle tightening of her shoulders, a defensive shift. The other two armed figures exchanged glances, a shared uneasiness passing between them. Amy, the smaller one, shifted her weight, a quick, jerky movement that spoke of internal agitation. "What are you talking about?" The lead woman's synthesized voice held a hint of irritation, a wavering in the modulation. "I'm talking about what I see," David replied, his tone even. "You lead this crew, you make the decisions, but you're carrying a heavy burden, perhaps a recent loss, someone important. It's why you're so focused on this mission, so driven. It's a distraction from a deeper pain, a void you're trying to fill." The air around them grew heavy, the silence punctuated only by the distant hum of the controlled ironclads. The lead woman's hand, which had been tapping, stilled, her fingers splayed rigidly. Mark's gaze remained fixed on David, a mixture of suspicion and dawning recognition. The controlled ironclads, still holding Lyra, seemed to pause, their metallic forms silent, as if sensing the shift in human tension. "You're trying to play mind game, soldier," the lead woman finally said, her voice now sharper, a brittle edge. "No games," David countered, "just observation. That scar on your left gauntlet, the way it's worn down on the edge, it's from a very specific type of impact, a close quarter struggle, perhaps with a projectile that grazed you, not a clean cut. The way you instinctively touch your right temple when you're stressed, a faint tremor in your hand, it suggests a recurring headache, perhaps from an old concussion or even an untreated stress fracture. These aren't guesses, these are deductions." He paused, letting the silence hang, allowing his words to settle. "You're a good leader, but you're stretched thin, and this mission, whatever it is, feels wrong to you, deeper than just the usual mercenary moral ambiguity." The lead woman's posture softened, almost imperceptibly, a slight slump in her shoulders that betrayed exhaustion. Her hand moved from her thigh to her sidearm, not in a threatening gesture, but as if seeking reassurance, a small comfort. Mark cleared his throat, a nervous sound that grated in the quiet. "What do you want?" the lead woman asked, her voice losing some of its synthesized edge, revealing a hint of wariness David had perceived. "Information," David said, "about those things, the ironclads, and about her." He nodded toward Lyra, who was watching them with an intensity that belied her apparently fragility. "She's not a prize, she's a survivor, and she needs help. And so do you, even if you don't realize it yet, because you're fighting a battle you don't understand." The lead woman hesitated, then signaled her crew. The net around David loosened, but did not disappear. He was still a prisoner, but the immediate threat of violence had receded. "Bring him," she ordered, her voice now carrying a hint of wariness, "and secure the alien. We have to move. Others will be here soon." They were taken to a temporary camp, a collection of hastily erected shelters nestled in a rocky outcrop. The air was thick with the scent of ozone and burnt metal, a tangible weight. The controlled ironclads remained outside, silent sentinels, like ancient automatons. David was placed in a makeshift cell, a shimmering force field. Lyra was in an adjacent enclosure, her blue eyes still fixed on him, large and luminous. The lead woman, whose name David learned was Sarah, entered his cell, her helmet off now. Her face was stern, lined with fatigue, a network of fine creases around her eyes. But those eyes, a deep hazel, held a glimmer of the wariness David had detected, a deep-seated exhaustion. "You have a strange way of making friends, soldier," Sarah said, her voice now unmodulated, a low alto. "I observe," David replied. "People tend to reveal themselves, even when they try not to. Their bodies speak a language clearer than words." Sarah leaned against the force field, crossing her arms. "So what did you observe about me, David? You seem to know a lot." David met her gaze. "Your right hand, Commander. The way you kept flexing your fingers, a restless motion, like they wanted to grasp something that wasn't there. It's a nervous habit. And the slight tremor in your left eye, almost imperceptible, but it's there, a constant flicker. It's a tell for someone who hasn't slept properly in days, maybe weeks, haunted by something. The weight you carry, the loss I mentioned, it's a child, isn't it? Recent. And the way you instinctively touch the empty space where a small hand might have been, it speaks volumes." Sarah flinched. Her composure cracked for a moment, her eyes clouded, a flicker of pain across her features, a raw vulnerability exposed. She looked away, towards the distant horizon, as if seeing something only she could, a ghost in the dust. "My son," she said, with her voice barely a whisper, strained and thin. "He was on a supply vessel, hit by a rogue asteroid 2 months ago. The profits from this mission were supposed to get him off the outer rim, start over, build a new life away from these memories." David nodded. He offered no platitudes, no empty words of comfort. He simply acknowledged her pain with a quiet stillness that was its own comfort. "I'm sorry for your loss, Sarah." The silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken emotion, heavy as the dust outside. Sarah looked at him, truly looked at him, for the first time, her gaze searching, assessing. "You're not like the others," she said. "The ones who come here, they're all about profit, about extraction. My team, we are too, for the most part, but you're different." "I'm a scout," David said. "My mission was to observe, not to exploit, and the Vanguard has fallen. My mission is survival now, and perhaps understanding." "And the alien?" Sarah asked, gesturing towards Lyra's enclosure. What do you observe about her? What do you observe about her? Is she worth the trouble you just caused, or is she just another resource to be taken?" David looked at Lyra. She was watching them, her luminous blue eyes, intelligent and wary, a deep pool of unspoken knowledge. "She's terrified," David stated, "but not of us, of them." He nodded towards the wild ironclads they knew were out there, the ones Sarah's team had been monitoring, distinct from her controlled units. "And she's trying to tell us something urgent about the true nature of these creatures, something that transcends simple profit." Suddenly, Lyra pressed her hand against the shimmering force field of her enclosure. A faint, high-pitched hum filled the air, and images, fleeting and chaotic, began to form in David's mind. It was a deluge of sensory input, a direct mental link that overwhelmed his normal perceptions. He saw the spire, not as a ruin, but vibrant, teeming with life, a kaleidoscope of alien activity. He saw beings like Lyra moving with grace and purpose, their civilization thriving, a radiant calm, complex energy. Then the images shifted. Not the controlled ironclads, but a vast, terrifying horde of them, distinct in their feral, insatiable hunger, their forms radiating a cold, dark energy. These were the true ironclads, the ones Lyra called the Void Eaters. They were lumbering, consuming machines, their metallic forms glowing with an internal, malevolent light, like embers from a dying star. They were tearing through the spire, absorbing its energy, its very essence, leaving only an empty husk. The images were accompanied by a wave of pure, unadulterated terror and a desperate plea for understanding. A primal scream for help that echoed in David's very soul. This was Lyra's innate telepathic ability, a desperate last effort from her injured state, connecting with the closest receptive mind, pouring her truth into him. David gasped, clutching his head, a searing pain between his eyes as the foreign thoughts integrated. The images were too vivid, too real. "They're just monsters," he said, looking at Sarah, his voice strained. "They're an opaque, they consume, they absorb. They destroyed her home, and they're coming for more. They're coming for us, drawn by anything that holds life or energy." Sarah looked from David to Lyra, her expression a mix of skepticism and a dawning of horror, a slow realization chilling her. Her burly subordinate, Mark, entered the cell, his face pale, his breathing coming in shallow gasps. "Commander Sarah," Mark said, his voice strained, a tremor running through it. "The long-range sensors, they're picking up more signatures. Dozens, hundreds, moving fast, headed this way. It's them, the Ironclads, and they aren't just the ones we've managed to subdue. They're the wild ones, the full swarm." Sarah's eyes widened, a dawning terror mirroring Mark's. They turned to David. "How did you know? What did you know?" "She showed me," David said, telepathically. "They're not just mindless machines, they're a hive, and they're hunting her or anyone else that stands in their way. They're drawn to her residual energy signature from the spire, and now to our camp's energy signature. Our controlled ironclads will only serve as a momentary distraction or added fuel." Mark looked at David with a new respect. Fear etched on his face, sweat beading down his brow despite the cool desert night. "Commander Sarah, if what he says is true, we need to move, now. Our controlled ironclads will only slow them down. They're not built for a full-scale assault like this. They're just tools, not guardians." Sarah was a leader, and she made decisions quickly. Her face hardened and resolved. The grief, the wariness, they were still there, but now overlaid with cold determination. "Get the gear ready," she ordered Mark. "We're evacuating, and release the prisoner, both of them. We're leaving everything not essential for survival." Mark hesitated, his gaze briefly flickering to Lyra. "The alien, Commander Sarah? She's a valuable capture, potentially for research, for our client, the Prophets." "She's a target," Sarah corrected, her voice firm, cutting off his protest. "And if David is right, she's our only chance of understanding what we're truly up against. And if he's wrong, we're all dead anyway. Our profits mean nothing if we're consumed. Survival is the only currency that matters now." She looked at David, her gaze direct. "You said you could read people. Can you read a way out of this impossible situation?" David nodded, his mind already racing, processing Lyra's data. "We need to understand their patterns, their weakness, and we need to use their terrain against them. We need to move fast, without leaving any energy trail they can follow." The two other armored figures, Scott and Amy, were already preparing their transport, their movements quick and efficient. David had noticed Scott's constant adjustments to his rifle scope, a meticulous, almost ritualistic action that spoke of a deep-seated need for order and precision in a chaotic world. Amy, on the other hand, had a tendency to hum a low, tuneless melody when she was stressed, a clear sign of anxiety, a way of self-soothing from past trauma, a quiet, almost unheard song. As they moved, David approached Scott. "You're good with that rifle, Scott," David said, his voice quiet, conversational. "You calibrate it to within a millimeter, a perfectionist touch. You probably spent hours cleaning it, oiling it. It's your comfort, isn't it? Your way of controlling the chaos around you. Everything has its place. Everything has its precise function. You've probably lost something important, something you couldn't control, didn't you? A structure in your life, a foundation that collapsed, and you couldn't do anything about it. And now you cling to what you can impose order on, seeking stability in a weapon. Scott paused, his hands still on his weapon, his gaze distant for a moment. He looked at David, surprised, then a flicker of deep sadness crossed his eyes, quickly masked by a practiced neutrality. "It's my job," he muttered, avoiding David's gaze. "It's more than that," David countered. "It's your anchor. In a world where everything feels out of control, that rifle is the one thing you can master. And right now, that mastery is going to save us. Your precision is to be our shield." He then moved to Amy, who was nervously humming as she checked her pack, her movements quick and jerky, as if constantly ready to bolt. "Amy," David said softly, "that hum, it's a lullaby, isn't it? Something you heard as a child. It's what you do when you're scared, when you're trying to soothe yourself. You want to escape this, don't you? To be somewhere else, where the boogeymen aren't real, where the past can't touch you." Amy stopped humming abruptly, her eyes wide, her breath catching. "How did you know?" "The rhythm," David explained. "It's not random. It's got a specific cadence, a comforting, repetitive pattern. And the way your eyes dart around, always looking for an escape route, a safe passage. You've been through a lot, haven't you? You've seen too many bad situations, felt trapped too many times. You just want to be safe, somewhere quiet, where you don't have to worry about the next threat, where you can simply be without fear." Amy swallowed hard, her gaze fixed on him, a raw vulnerability in her expression. "Yes," she whispered, her voice fragile. "I just want to go home, to a place where there are no monsters." "We will," David promised, "but first we have to survive this. And to do that, we need to work together. Your instincts, your fear, it's a warning system, a heightened sense of danger. Use it. It will keep us alive. That fear, it means you're still alive, and you want to stay that way. And that desire will be our driving force." With Sarah's command, the force field around David and Lyra dropped. Lyra, though still injured, moved with a surprising grace, her luminous eyes never leaving David. She reached out a hand and David took it. Her skin was cool, smooth, and surprisingly strong. "There are many," Lyra communicated, her thoughts clear in David's mind, a cold certainty. "They'll consume us all. Life, energy, thought. They are void eaters. They are drawn to the Spire's essence, and now to any active energy source. Our transport will attract them too quickly, a shining beacon in the dark." "Void eaters," David repeated aloud, a fitting name. He turned to Sarah. "They're not just attacking, they're feeding, and they're drawn to energy signatures, our transports, our weapons, they're beacons. We need to abandon the vehicles, and our controlled ironclads will only become obstacles or target, slowing us down before they are inevitably consumed themselves. We move on foot and quiet, minimizing our energy output." Sarah grimaced. A tight line formed on her lips. Abandoning her gear meant abandoning her primary means of escape. But the logic was sound, undeniably grim. "Then we move on foot. Mark, Scott, Amy, with me. David, you and the alien lead. Point us towards a defensible position, somewhere they can't easily follow, a place where their massive forms become a hindrance. And leave our controlled ironclads behind. They'll draw the horde away for a time, a grim sacrifice, buying us moments we cannot spare." The team moved out, abandoning their heavy transport and the now static-controlled ironclads. The wild ironclads were closing in, their metallic growls now a constant, vibrating presence in the air, a low thrum that promised destruction. The ground trembled in their approach, sending dust dancing in the strange orange light. Lyra, leaning on David for support, guided him through a labyrinth of jagged rock formations. Her knowledge of the terrain was intimate, a silent language of subtle shifts in the wind, faint echoes bouncing off rock surfaces, and the almost imperceptible hum of the planet itself, guiding them through hidden paths. David, in turn, supported her, his hand firm on her arm. He could feel her, a cold knot in his stomach, but also a fierce determination to survive and to warn. They reached a narrow canyon, its walls rising steeply on either side, a natural choke point, a funnel designed by the planet itself. Here, David said, turning to Sarah, we can funnel them. Their size will work against them in this tight space, and we can use their height to our advantage, raining fire down from above. Sarah nodded, her eyes assessing the terrain, already planning their defense. Scott, Amy, get to the high ground. Cover the entrance. Mark, with me. We'll set up a defensive line at the mouth of the canyon. David, you and Lyra, stay back. You're too vulnerable for the front line, too vital to lose. No, Lyra communicated, her voice firm in David's mind, a spark of defiance in her luminous eyes. I must fight. My people, they are gone, but their knowledge remains. I can help. My connection to them allows me to sense their weakness, to see their flaws and their terrifying unity. David looked at Sarah. She's right. She has intimate knowledge of these creatures. She can help us find their vulnerabilities. She is our tactical advantage. Sarah hesitated, then nodded. Brief nod of acceptance. All right, but stay close. And if it gets too hot, you fall back. We will not sacrifice you needlessly. Your knowledge is too important. The first ironclad, one of the wild, monstrous ones, emerged from the dust, its metallic form filling the canyon entrance, a hulking shadow against the dim light. Its sharp, protrusionous glints in the orange light, like sharpened teeth, it moved with a slow, deliberate pace, its unseen gaze fixed on them, drawn by the residual energy signatures of their presence. Their joints, Lyra communicated to David, a flash of an image in his mind, a vulnerable hinge point on the ironclad's legs, partially shielded by armor, but with a subtle glowing seam that pulsed faintly with contained energy. They are armored, but not impenetrable. In their energy core within the chest, it is their lifeblood, briefly exposed when they fully commit to a charge, a moment of reckless power. David relayed the information to Sarah. Focus fire on the joints, and if you can, aim for the chest, center mass, when they're about to strike. That's when their core is exposed. Mark opened fire, his heavy bolt blaster slamming into the ironclad's legs. Sparks flew, and the creature stumbled, its massive weight shifting precariously. But it did not fall. Scott and Amy, from their elevated positions, targeted the same spot, their precision shots finding their mark, chipping away at the armor. The ironclad roared, a giant metallic sound that scraped against their ears, and shifted its weight, its movements becoming more erratic, like a wounded beast. Most ironclads appeared, pushing into the canyon, their numbers a crushing wave of dark metal. The air filled with the whine of energy weapons and the clang of metal on rocks, a symphony of destruction. David, using his own rifle, aimed for the exposed joints, his shots precise and deliberate, each one counting. Lyra, despite her injuries, stood beside him, her hand glowing faintly as she projected tactical information directly into David's mind, highlighting weak points, predicting attack vectors. One ironclad broke through the initial line, lumbering towards Sarah. Its protrusions lowered for a charge. Mark moved to intercept, firing, but the creature swung a massive forearm, its bladed protrusion narrowly missing him. Sarah, quickly as thought, rolled clear, firing her sidearm at its chest. The shots sparked harmlessly off its armor, deflected by the dense plating. The core, Lyra cried out, her voice strong in David's mind. Desperate. It is exposed when they fully commit their weight to a charge. Their most powerful strike reveals their most vulnerable points. David shouted to warn Sarah. As the ironclad prepared another swing, its chest plates shifted, revealing a faint, pulsing blue within, a beacon of destruction. Sarah saw it. She emptied her clip into the glowing core. The ironclad shrieked, a high-pitched grinding sound, a metallic death rattle, and then its metallic form began to glow with an intense, unstable light. It exploded, sending shrapnel tearing through the canyon, its metallic remnants scattering harmlessly to the ground, reducing to slag and dust. The explosion created a momentary lull, a brief respite from the constant assault, but more ironclads were coming. The ground vibrations with their numbers, the deep, unsettling thrum that promised an endless tide. "They are restless," Lyra communicated, her voice tinged with despair, her light flickering silently. "They will not stop until all life, all energy is consumed. They are pure hunger." "We need a plan," David said to Sarah, his voice strained, though still calm. "We can't hold this position indefinitely. Our ammunition is finite. We're bleeding resources." Sarah looked at her team. Mark was breathing heavily, his face grim, his usual steady hand trembling. Scott was reloading, his movements precise but slow, a sign of deep fatigue. Amy was trembling, her hum a low, almost inaudible drone, a desperate attempt at self-comfort. They were tired, they were losing hope, and it was visible in their defeated postures. David turned to Mark. "Mark," he said, his voice calm amidst the chaos, "you're a family man, aren't you? I saw the way you adjusted that locket on your neck earlier, a subtle gesture, but telling. It's not just a trinket, it's a picture, isn't it? Your kids. You're fighting for them. You're fighting to get them back. That's what keeps you moving. That's what gives you strength to stand against these things, the images on their faces." Mark's eyes, tired and fearful, widened slightly, sudden light in their depths. He reached up, touched his locket beneath his armor, a protective gesture. "How?" he whispered, his voice hoarse. "It's in your posture, the way you shield your chest when you're under fire, a reflexive movement that speaks of a deeper protection," David explained. "It's not just self-preservation, it's protection. You're picturing their faces, aren't you? You're picturing their smiles, their laughter. That's what pushes you so hard for their future." Mark nodded. A single tear traced a path through the dust on his cheeks. "Yes," he whispered. "My son, my daughter, they're waiting." "Then fight for them," David urged. "Fight to see them again. We need to create a diversion, a big one. Something that will draw them away from this canyon, give us a chance to escape. Something that will blind and disorient a hive, not just individual creatures." He then turned to Scott. "Scott, your precision. It's not just about hitting a target. It's about making every shot count, every movement exact. You're a planner, aren't you? You like things to be orderly, predictable. Chaos frightens you, but sometimes chaos is a tool, a precise tool, if wielded correctly." Scott looked at him, his meticulous nature evident even in his fear, his brow furrowed in concentration. "What kind of chaos?" "The kind that blinds them," David replied. "Lyra, can you show us their sensory weakness? Their vulnerabilities to light, sound, anything that can disrupt the hive mind, not just damage an individual unit, but shatter their collective consciousness." Lyra nodded, her hand still clasped in David, her glowing fingertips sending a pulse of energy. A torrent of images flooded his mind. Blinding flashes that overloaded optical sensors, discordant frequencies that caused metallic forms to vibrate painfully, a specific energy signature that seemed to disrupt the Ironclad's internal system at a deep hive level, causing them to flail. They are sensitive to concentrated sonic pulses and high-frequency bursts. It disorients them, breaks their cohesion, their shattered sensory input, sending them into a disarray. David relayed this information to Sarah, his voice quick and urgent. "Commander Sarah, do we have any sonic emitters, flashbangs, anything that can generate a high-frequency pulse that can overwhelm a collective rather than just one creature?" Sarah's eyes lit up, a spark of hope igniting in their depths. "We have a few sonic charges left from the Vanguard's demolition kit, designed to break through a solid rock formation. They pack a punch, they're powerful, and some old-school flash grenades, still effective against visual sensors if used correctly." "Perfect," David said. "Scott, Amy, you're the distraction. You need to lure them out of this canyon, then detonate the charges. Mark, Sarah, come with me. We'll cover their retreat and make our escape through the confusion, moving silently as they recover." Amy's hum grew louder, a nervous tremor, her hands clenched and unclenching. David looked at her. "Amy, your fear is a strength. It makes you cautious. It makes you aware. Use it. You're going to be the one who draws them in. You're going to be the bait, but you're going to be safe because Scott will cover you. His precision ensures your path is clear, and we'll be right behind you, covering your withdrawal. Amy looked at Scott, then back at David. Her eyes, though still wide, held a flicker of resolve, a hardening of her gaze. I can do it, she whispered, her hum finally ceasing, replaced by a quiet determination. Scott, his face grim but determined, nodded, a single sharp nod. I'll make sure of it. Every step will be covered. They won't touch her. The plan was set. Amy and Scott moved to the canyon entrance, planting the sonic charges and preparing the flash grenades with practiced efficiency. The Ironclads continued their restless advance, their numbers growing, the leading edge of the horde now visible, a wall of metal and dark intent. Now, David shouted. Scott and Amy triggered their flash grenades. Blinding white erupted, momentarily disorienting the lead Ironclads and sending ripples of confusion through their approaching horde. A sudden, searing pain through their optical sensors. Then the sonic charges detonated. A deafening high-frequency wail ripped through the canyon, vibrating through the very bones of the terrain, an unbreachable screech that tore at consciousness. The Ironclads staggered, their metallic forms vibrating violently. Their movements became erratic. Their collective roars became a discordant, pained shriek, a chorus of agony. Some even stumbled, their internal systems seemingly overwhelmed, their hive cohesion momentarily shattered, their coordinated advance broken. Go, yelled Sarah, her voice cutting through the noise. Scott and Amy, under the cover of the sonic assault, sprinted back towards their positions, their forms blurring with speed. The Ironclads, though disoriented, began to recover, their metallic growls turning into less coordinated roars, their individual units flailing into confusion. Sarah, Mark, and David laid down a concentrated barrage of fire, targeting the now exposed energy cores of the disoriented Ironclads, striking at the most vulnerable points. One by one they exploded, their metallic shrapnel adding to the chaos, raining down fragments of dark steel. As the last of Scott and Amy reached them, Sarah gave the order to retreat. They moved through a series of narrow, winding passages, Lyra guiding them with an unerring sense of direction, her faint glow barely illuminating the dark path. The sonic charges had brought them precious time, but the Ironclads, though temporarily confused, would eventually regroup and pursue, their relentless hunger driving them. They reached a hidden crevice, a natural cave system that plunged into the planet's crust. Here, Lyra communicated, her thoughts a whisper in David's mind, a place of refuge for a time, a place where the collective senses cannot easily penetrate, a break in their overwhelming presence. They descended into the cool, dark depths, the sound of the Ironclads fading above them, becoming a distant muffled thrum. The air grew damp, a faint bioluminescent moss illuminated their path, casting an ethereal green glow. They found a small chamber, large enough for them all, and collapsed, exhausted, their bodies aching, their minds reeling from the day's terror. Sarah looked at David, her face streaked with dust and sweat, but her eyes held a new light, a glimmer of respect and a budding trust, a recognition of his uncanny ability. You saved us, David, she said, her voice filled with genuine gratitude, devoid of its earlier skepticism. You and her, she nodded towards Lyra, who was now resting against a rock, her eyes closed, recuperating, her subtle glow dimming slightly. We saved each other, David corrected, his gaze sweeping over the tired faces of Mark, Scott, and Amy, each showing a new understanding. And we are not out of danger yet. The Void Eaters will eventually find us. But now we understand them, and we have an ally, guide, a connection to the world's true nature. He looked at Mark, who was now carefully examining his locket, a small, knowing smile on his face. His gaze filled with the distant family. He looked at Scott, who was meticulously cleaning his rifle, but with a newfound purpose in his movements, his earlier tensions replaced by a focused quiet. He looked at Amy, who was no longer humming, but watching the entrance to the cave with a quiet vigilance. Her fear now a tool rather than a burden, her eyes sharp and attentive. "We have a chance," David continued, his voice low but firm, resonating with conviction. "A chance to fight back. Not just for survival, but for this world. For what they've consumed, and for what they threaten to consume next. For a future that isn't just a barren rock and silence." Lyra's eyes opened, luminous in the dim light. She looked at David, then at Sarah and her team. Faint, almost imperceptible smile touched her lips, a rare expression of hope. "Yes," she communicated, her thoughts clear and strong in David's mind, echoed in the silent chamber. "A chance, a new hope for an old despair. The void can be pushed back." The alliance, forged in desperation and shared in peril, had begun. The parched, red alien landscape of Xylos Prime was still a hostile environment, and the metallic creatures still a formidable threat. But now they had become a common purpose, a shared understanding, and a leader who could see beyond the surface, into the hearts of those around him, unifying them against a greater enemy. The fight was far from over, but for the first time, there was hope.